Hey, what's up? My name is Jose Duncan Jr., and I would like to welcome you to the Unnatural Born Leader podcast. Welcome to episode 27 of the Unnatural Born Leader podcast. Thank you for everyone who's tuning in today. I appreciate the continued support, and I appreciate the continued love and having you guys share the podcast with friends and family and people in your circle who may need the message that I'm sharing. And I continue to encourage you to leave reviews on the podcast if you like the podcast, and continue to share it with people who you think it could bring value to. So last week on this segment of You versus You, we spoke about the idea of not knowing everything. Actually, 2 weeks ago, we spoke about the idea of not knowing everything and going into great detail about understanding what it is that we don't know, and not to pursue to know everything, but to know what you feel you need to know, or what has been presented to you as what you need to know to get where you need to be. So the idea of that episode was about learning how to learn and practice different techniques of learning things, because we are all committed to consistent learning through our lifetime. And a lot of mentors have told me before that if you make a commitment to continuously learning in your lifetime, then you're a student forever. And that way you grow forever. So that was a segment of really taking into account that we don't know everything, but being committed to learning. This week, we're going to finish up this segment of You versus You. I wanted to put out a few episodes that really targeted towards how we attack the opposite mindset that's been plaguing us, or how we attack the mindset that we used to have, and going to battle with that person over and over in order to come out on the other side with a newfound perspective on life, a newfound perspective on the same things that we're dealing with, right? Justin Sue has said, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. So when we change the way we approach our mind and how we interact with ourselves, the things that used to matter to us may not matter. The things that we used to believe we may not believe today. So this last segment, I want to name this episode "Just Sleep on It." It's kind of a phrase that I know many of you have heard in the past. Just sleep on it. When we have important decisions to make, or when we are in very conflicted areas of our life and we need to make really impactful decisions that may impact more people than ourselves, we can get advice to just sleep on it. And what I want to do today, I want to take a deeper dive as to why people say things like just sleep on it, or go meditate, or go relax, or breathe. I want to take a deeper dive into why those things are advised when we are asked to make critical, important decisions in our lives. As some of you may know, I'm currently writing my first novel. It's a nonfiction self-help memoir that will be coming out later this fall. And in my writing process, I've been taking a lot of time to reflect on my life and to reflect on some of the events of my life and the individuals that were present that taught me great lessons that I still carry with me today. And in the book, I spoke a lot about this idea of making really important decisions and having been faced with important decisions, whether it's pertaining to, playing football, my health, my relationships with certain people, or my commitment to a cause, or things like that, and how all those decisions require a lot of perspective and just really self-awareness. And I spoke about a lot about that in the book, so I definitely can't wait to get that into the hands of people who I really, really believe can benefit from reading that novel. But I wanted to backtrack to playing football. It's kind of a consistent theme of what I talk about, because a lot of my foundation has came from playing organized sports. So as you may know, I reference that quite often, because a lot of the bulk of the teaching and where the lessons began was in that phase of my life. So playing football for such a long period of my life taught me some really important skills and lessons about taking accountability and this idea of really taking ownership of our decisions and not making it an external conflict, right? What I mean by that is when we are required to make certain decisions or required to be in a place or required to do something, it's important that we take complete ownership of that decision. Whether there are a lot of people involved in the decision making process, our role we have to embrace. And in order to embrace that role, we must take ownership of that role. And sometimes that role can be important decision making. So as our lives become more complex and more decisions that will need to be made, it's important that we consider a lot of the variables that are involved. And even some of the most simple decisions, you can say, there are so many variables and circumstances that are involved in that decision. In past episodes, I've talked about how this trickle effect of decision making affects everyone, right? When one person makes a decision, they may not know in that moment the impact and the domino effect it can have on other people. They actually may never experience the effect of their decision. So it's important that we make decisions with the right intent, because I believe the right intent on our decisions will have the greater and more beneficial effect to those who it may impact along the way. So, to be honest, this can be extremely overwhelming to make some of these decisions. And the urge to make decisions quickly increases. We want to make the quickest decision that requires the least amount of thinking, decision that requires least amount of thinking different ways. We want to make decisions that are going to solve problems almost immediately. We like that instant gratification, instant fix that we like, right? And I'm definitely a culprit of that, someone who has made very fast decisions without really considering the information involved. And while that sometimes can really, really hurt me, I realize that other times it's great to be able to make those fast decisions, to think fast, to think on my toes, and to be solution oriented when facing with problems. So that's really a personality type thing right there, where I know a lot of people in my circle, including my girlfriend and my sister, are very cautious, very analytical of the information that's involved, and they won't make fast decisions. They'll make very calculated decisions based on information that's involved. They'll consider the pros, the cons. They'll consider more angles of a problem than I would when I'm approaching that decision. And it's mainly because I'm an optimist. I believe that in the end, whatever decision is chosen, things will be fine, that people will work it out. And that optimistic attitude has definitely helped in a lot of instances, but it can be frustrating to people who are very analytical on that end. We all deal with this one thing, and it's kind of like a plague in a way. We all suffer from this one thing when we are making important decisions, and that's overthinking. Whether we are fast thinkers, solution based people who think fast, think on their toes, it can come a time where we overthink things. And that overthinking comes from so many other variables like who's involved, what age am I when I'm making this decision, what do I have to lose when I'm making this decision, how much will it cost, where do I have to go, what do I have to do, who do I have to partner with, right? All those kind of things get more involved when we get more involved in different areas, and we tend to overthink. I know I have dozens of times overthinking things that I know that I want to do, but I consider too many variables. I consider too many other occurrences instead of sticking to the things that are true to me. And some people who don't overthink well, right? God bless you. It's definitely a gift if you're able to analyze and get the data and apply the data without having to overthink, that's really a blessing. And I continue to urge you to use that skill and to make that accessible to everyone. Our emotional state is one of the most important things when we are faced with some of these decisions. Because emotionally, we can be in places where our judgment is extremely clouded. We can make decisions that are biased. We can have the wrong intent attached to our decisions. Decisions made like revenge or to hurt someone or to take something from someone or to give someone something with expecting something in return, right? A lot of our emotional decisions we have to check and monitor, because when we're making decisions from an emotional state, it can definitely have some adverse effects than what we thought at the time. I learned this especially playing football. And the game of football has so many ups and downs, so many ebbs and flows in the game of football. And it's such a battle all day. Those 60 minutes you're playing is such a battle. And you go through multiple emotional stages in the game. But there's a game plan. There's a game plan that's been talked about all week since Monday. There's your job. There's where you need to be. There's what you need to see. There's what's expected of you. And those are critical decisions that are made prior to the game even starting. But we cannot control the emotional state we get into when we're in it. You know what I mean? So it's important that we detach from that emotional state and make the best decision based on information that we've collected. And that's easier said than done, really. Because sometimes emotionally, our gut is telling us to make a decision, and we still have to trust our intuition at the same time. So it's such a conflicted area. It's just all about finding that balance between emotional state and actual information that's presented. So about 2 years ago or 2.5 years ago, I was a residential advisor for 30 incoming students who were moving into the college phase. These were high school kids who were mostly underprivileged, or lived in more underprivileged areas, or had more of a struggle in their process of upcoming and going through a high school process and trying to get to college, right? So I served as an advisor and a counselor to these students. For 2 years in a row, I did this job. It was an amazing job. Big shout out to Ed and G and those guys at Talent Development and URI for even giving me that opportunity or accepting me for that opportunity, because I almost didn't get accepted. One thing that always stuck with me from that experience and all those trainings we used to do as advisors and counselors is this idea of addressing the underlying issues. We sat in meetings for days, not days, but day after day and long periods of time talking about issues that came up with the students, with their residential life, with the academic standings, with counseling, with resources. And it was all about finding the underlying problem so we can address that problem. My mentors at the time didn't believe that it was important to just address what was on the surface. While that's important for short-term solutions, when behind the scenes we wanted to really address the cause of the problem. When we address the cause of the problem, we can in some ways ensure that this type of problem won't occur again, because there's a system in place for when that happens. But if we took the approach of just solving the problem that's on the external, we would have never gotten to the real issue, the underlying issue that was involved with the students. And we would have the same kind of problems over and over and over again. And if you know anything about self-awareness and learning more about yourself and your leadership abilities, you never want to run into the same exact problems over and over without addressing why that problem's even occurring, right? So those guys were clearly great mentors, and I really appreciate for some of the teaching that they gave me. So just switching gears back to what I was talking about before, when it's time to make really important decisions in our life, our future, our career, our income, our relationships, it's important that we make these decisions with clarity. And I am not a genius or expert on clarity on decision making, but I speak about things I do know, and I speak about things that I have clarity on myself. And this idea of finding clarity or being in pursuit of clarity consistently came from a guy named Brendan Burchard. It was a book I was reading called High Performance Habits: How Extraordinary People Become That Way. And he spent a lot of the time in the book talking about clarity and how this pursuit of clarity is so important because you would find what he called your quality output, right? The thing that you can really pinpoint as something you want to give the world consistently and put your effort into, right? So when those decisions come up, it's important that we make them with clarity, and we are always in the pursuit of clarity. Making decisions with clarity is really, really important because it provides a easiness to our decisions. Not saying the work is going to be easy, but the decisions become a lot simpler because we are focused, we are deliberate and intentional with our approach. But clarity doesn't come cheap. Clarity doesn't come cheap. Clarity takes time, it requires patience, it requires self-awareness at a really, really high level. And even after we gain a lot of clarity, there will be instances in our life where we are required to gain new perspectives of clarity, right? So that's kind of a cycle going about clarity, and we have to be committed to always pursuing clarity when we want to make the right decision. Sometimes we just need temporary clarity. When those decisions are so intense and those instances become so overwhelming, we need that temporary clarity, right? And that's the thing I want to really spend the next few minutes talking about, that getting that instant clarity to make that decision that you need to make right now, because sometimes the decision needs to be made within a 24-hour frame, and we need to make those decisions. Or sometimes we are really overwhelmed and conflicted in our hearts about something, and we need to find clarity within a short term, or within a day or so. So there are practices that we can implement to gain the clarity needed in that short pace of time. One of the most important practices you have all may have heard before is meditation. Meditation has shown to have a large effect on reducing anxiety, and it helps creative juices start flowing, creative thinking and problem solving. It helps all those things perform a lot better. When we meditate, we're taking time to breathe, become one with ourselves, to relax our mind, to ease our heart rate. And in that moment, we are able to think more clearly, focus our intentions on something, and be very open minded to other areas. It's amazing what happens when we meditate, and it can be really difficult to get into that meditative state. But if you wanted to, I think just going on YouTube and typing in a guided meditation when you're just starting out, and letting that take you through your first few meditational experiences with guided meditation and breathing and the pause breathing and the inhale for 2 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, exhale for two. That's a meditative technique I've been practicing. And what you're going to find is that once you hit that state, you'll know. You'll know you're in it because something is going to happen to you. You're going to be really relaxed. You might start tearing up a little bit, and you may get some yawns. And that's when you know you're in that meditative state. That heart rate is starting to drop, and you are really at peace. And I think in that state, we'll find a lot of clarity for decisions that need to be made. A while back, I encouraged my girlfriend to start meditating because she just started her business and she's been working on a lot of things for her business and her launch party and things that she's involved in. And she became so overwhelmed daily with all the things that were going on, and interacting with social media and going back to her regular job and then working on her vision for herself. And it's just so much in a day. And sometimes I'm just telling her, like, babe, stop. Stop. Take a moment, stop, and just breathe. Go ahead and meditate. Close everything down. Go ahead and take a deep breath. Take a few deep breaths. Lay back. Don't move. Give yourself about 5 minutes. And at first, she really thought 5 minutes was a really long time to meditate. But if you ever meditated for 5 good minutes, you know that thing feels like an eternity, or it feels like it goes by very fast. So, she's been practicing it, and she started to realize that she would get really relaxed, really poised, really quick. And it happens within like 5 minutes. So that's that temporary clarity that we can get from meditating. One of the other ways that we can find clarity, in which a lot of us do it already, is to reach out to our resources. What I mean by that is asking friends and relatives or a trusted person in your life for their opinion on something. And when you're asking for their opinion, ask them to be unbiased about their opinion, unbiased about just what you're telling them, and letting them make a decision or help you make a decision, and allow them to factor in all the variables if you're not able to do it. That's why personally I like to have operational minds in my circle, in my personal people I speak with daily. People who are very operational, know how to operate and know how to get the details done. You know what I mean? Because I'm a really big picture person, and I can see a vision, or I can have an idea, or have something on my heart. But sometimes I need clarity from a realist, or someone who can really see through the vision, see through the ideas, and see the operation happening. So definitely really getting an unbiased opinion from people that you trust. And sometimes you may not need that opinion. Sometimes you may not need what they're telling you, or something that they tell you spark you to think of something on your own, right? So it's not necessarily taking exactly what they said and applying it, but rather than hearing their opinion about something and then making sense of it right then and there. But ultimately, you know that the decision's on you. So definitely a technique you can try. Lastly, but the most important one, I believe, as a personal growth advocate, as someone who's very enthusiastic about personal growth, is sleeping on it. If you have the opportunity to sleep on the decision, I think it might be one of the best decisions you'll make. And I'm smiling right now because I'm reflecting on all the times where I was so overwhelmed, so anxious about a decision, so anxious about something, and I can finally bring myself to go to sleep and wake up in the morning, and I realize when I wake up, that decision's not as hard as it was last night, or that thing that was conflicting me isn't as conflicting in the morning. It's something amazing about that, being able to fall asleep and wake up with such clarity about an issue. And I practice a lot of this type of technique in my relationship, because a lot of times in a relationship, you can have disagreements with your partner. I'm young, but I can tell you, me and my girl, we've had a lot of disagreements, and even relatives, we've had a lot of disagreements. And I've come into a space where I'd rather be wrong, but ultimately find a solution that works for both of us, than to be right and to have that on my heart and to go back and forth and never find any commonality. So what has helped me is when we have a problem and we can't get to a solution that day, I hate going to sleep upset. But sometimes it's important that to give each other space, you both have a night of rest and come back with a clear mind, less anxious, less things on your heart, less things involved, right? And then have that conversation that needs to be had. And I think that's been a very healthy transition that I've tried in my relationship and dealing with people in my life. So it may not be the best answer, but it's definitely something that you want to try when making important decisions. So just quickly, I'm going to provide some quick research as to why sleeping, or taking a rest when you have to make an important decision, can really be beneficial. So I want to read you a quick just excerpt from some of the research I was doing on, sleep and how that impacts decision making. And came across this scholarly article, and I was reading the overview and also the ultimate reflection from the research. And here's a quick, excerpt from that. The researchers suggest that unconscious thought, contrary to the way many of us think about, is an active, goal-directed thought process. The primary difference is that in unconscious thought, the usual biases that are part of the conscious thinking are absent. In unconscious thought, we weigh the importance of the component that make up the decisions more equally, leaving our preconceptions at the door of consciousness. So what I took from this was this idea of unconscious thinking and decision making stemming from being well rested. And in the research, they were talking about how they did a test in the lab with 20 adults at a computer screen, and you had a control group of unconscious individuals who were making unconscious decisions, aka well-rested individuals, and then you had a group of immediate thinkers who were thinking on a very conscious level, maybe people who were a little more sleep deprived and things like that. And what they found was that the unconscious control group were making more decisions from a very balanced place. It was a lot more variables that were taken into place, and were very raw and real, and the decisions didn't seem biased in any way. And the conscious group were making very immediate decisions. They were fast. They didn't factor in other possible variables. It was very black and white to that group. So from that research, I can tell that the way we think and the way we make decisions is really based off our state at the time, emotionally, socially, just where we are physically in that moment as well. Are we well rested, or are we not? Are we taking our time to consider other factors, or are we not? And I never want to make an argument that one way is the right way to do something, but I definitely think there's a time and place to make a more conscious decision, and a time and place to make a more of an unconscious decision. And finding a good balance between both will really be ultimately what's going to help us make really critical decisions in our life. But you don't have to be really balanced and being able to balance these on a great scale. If you're someone who thrives off making really conscious, immediate decisions, then there are times in your life where that's important. I just urge you to have people in your corner who are able to break it down for you, or can give you some type of advising along the way for that. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be the best balanced person when decision making, but you definitely have to have individuals in your life that you trust that can provide that balance for you. And the same goes in the other way. If you're a very unconscious thinker who considers all the factors and variables, it's important that you have someone in your life that you can trust that can help you make decisions on your toes a lot better. So it's all about finding what the resources are, but definitely this idea of sleeping on it. And when we're making important decisions, to just take a moment and to rest our minds, or take a moment and to stop doing what we're doing and take some self-care time, some self-awareness time, and then come back and make that decision powerfully, with certainty, and with the right intentions. So I really hope I was able to give you guys some perspective on making important decisions that are critical, that needs to be made. I know I went on a bit of a rant in different parts of it, but it just speaking about what's on my heart. And I think when it comes to you versus you, I think battling that person in you that doesn't want to make the right decisions, or that's not making the best decisions for you or the people around you, is someone you have to fight off. It's someone you have to deal with. That person will always be there that's not making the best decisions. But you have to say no to that person and say yes to the person that's going to make the best decisions for you and the people you love. So thank you for tuning into another week of the Unnatural Born Leader podcast. I really hope I was able to give you some value in this episode. And if I was, please leave a comment down below, share the podcast, follow me on social media at Jose Duncan Jr. on Instagram, on Jose Duncan Jr. on Facebook, and other platforms you can find me with the same exact name. So once again, thank you for tuning in, and I hope I was able to, bring it this week, give you something this week to take away, and hoping everyone has a healthy and happy August. Let's continue to take care of our bodies, our immune systems, and just continue to add value to other people's lives, and have patience. So, as I always say, positivity is contagious and attitude is everything. Thank you, thank you, thank you. God bless you guys. I'll talk to you guys next week.